as we came back into 2024, you can't look back. You just move forward. You have guys that are in different roles, guys that are in a new place, and ultimately it's just about what this team's willing to do to go accomplish what they can. And that's where the edge comes from. I don't want a team that develops an edge based off of others. It needs to be about us.
Hello and welcome to Always College Football. I'm your host, Greg McElroy. Today is Tuesday, June 11th. We hope you had a terrific couple days. Sorry that we weren't here with you yesterday, but take Monday off. We are here for you today. We hope you're enjoying the show wherever you get it, whether it's on the Apple Podcast platform, Spotify, ESPN's YouTube channel. We appreciate you being here. Mark Kubiak, Jack Foster, Jake Garcia, all along for the ride. We have a great visit in store for you today. We're going to visit with head coach of Florida State, Mike Norvell. Talk a little bit about the disappointment at the end of the season, understandable disappointment at the end of the season, and how that has set them up for success here in 2024. Talk about some of the new faces on the roster, some of the guys they brought in via the portal, some of the experience they have back on the offensive and defensive lines, and that first game in Dublin, which should be a fascinating one against Georgia Tech. After our visit with him, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the under-the-radar playoff games. Like, everybody knows the headliner games in college football. It doesn't take a genius to tell you that Michigan and Ohio State has a huge impact on who's going to make the college football playoff. We understand that, okay? We understand that that's a massive game. We understand that Bama, Georgia, and Georgia, Texas are massive games. But we're going to give you a list and go week by week in the season of the games that have playoff implications, but you're not thinking about it right now, here in the summer before we get into fall camp and ultimately get into the season here in 2024. And then finally, we're going to give you some news and notes, some of the things that have gone on here in the college football world over the last couple of days. So without much further ado, let's dive in. He's the head coach of the Florida State Seminoles, Mike Norvell. Coach, it's always a pleasure. I've known you now for 12 years, and dating back to your time at Arizona State, followed you to Memphis, did some of your games there, now at Florida State. You guys on the cusp of what was, I think, a historically great season last year, if not for the unfortunate nature of the way the season ended. I know we're not going to talk too much about last year, but this is kind of an opportunity for you to say how you guys have moved on from that and how you're focusing forward as opposed to looking back at how the season finished up.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to how we operate. And, you talk about the objective in our program. It's to go get better. And, that's the focus for this team, is in everything that we're doing, on the field, off the field, just to continue to improve, to stay focused to being the best we can possibly be. And, we had a great team, a great run a year ago, one that will be remembered, I believe forever for what they were able to accomplish, out there on the field. And, now you get a chance to go and take the next step. And we've got a lot of great players that are returning, some newcomers join the program from the high school ranks, some transfers that are coming in. And now it's time for the 2024 football team to go leave its mark. And a lot of work that's gone in, and I think our guys have done a great job of just having that focus on the improvement, and really trying to establish the identity of what this year team's going to be.
Well, but it's one of those strange things as a coach where, like, okay, you experience the disappointment. It's heartbreaking. It's awful. It's unfair. It's all these different things. And it provides a chip on the shoulder. And you want to move forward, but you also don't want your guys to lose that hunger and that anger and that dissatisfaction with how things went. So how, as a coach, do you kind of balance that? Like, hey, man, we need to be ticked off about how things finished, but also, like, we don't need to let that hold us down. Like, how do you balance that as a coach?
Well, I mean, it's still all about us. I mean, to be honest with you, it's just about where we are, where we're going, and ultimately what we're going to do with the opportunity that's in front of us. I don't reference back to last year. It's not something that I do. We got a chip and an edge, just because it's an opportunity to go and improve, and that's what we're here to do at Florida State. Obviously, anybody who's a part of last year's team, we lived the experience. Nobody enjoyed having to go through it. It wasn't right. It wasn't some of those things that you would ever think would have happened, but it did. So, as we came back into 2024, you can't look back. You just move forward. You have guys that are in different roles, guys that are in a new place, and ultimately it's just about what this team's willing to do to go accomplish what they can. And that's where the edge comes from. I don't want a team that develops an edge based off of others. It needs to be about us and what we're willing to give for what we want.
I think that's a terrific approach, Coach. And the thing that's kind of fun about your team is that the expectations remain, which is great, but it's a lot of new faces. There's a lot of guys that were there, as well, that have played considerable roles for you, but a lot of new faces at quarterback, new faces at wide receiver. Some of the superstars of last year's team have departed, which has now opened up new opportunities and avenues for other guys to step into those roles. So as you went into spring and looked at some of the voids that needed to be filled, how do you feel like you've addressed some of those spots, and who are some guys that have really stepped up in the last 4 or 5 months into those star roles that we'll be seeing a lot of this fall?
Yeah, well, I mean, it started back, in January, and as we started the winter program, as this team, really came together with some, whether it was early graduate high school guys that joined the program, some transfers that came in, but guys that have been within the program that are really emerging as the leaders of tomorrow, something that, I've been pleased with. And, when you look at our team, I think when it all has to start in the trenches, and, the offensive defensive line, really excited about that group. I think our O-line is going to be as good as we've been since we've been here. Guys like Darius Washington, Maurice Smith, Jeremiah Byers, getting Rob Scott back and healthy, plus a couple new transfers and high school guys that have joined in, and you're seeing guys that have been within the program for 2 or 3 years just continuing to emerge and develop. Love the depth that we have, and I'm really excited about that group. And when you look at the defensive front, I think it has a chance to be a real strength. You got Pat Payton, who's been an all-conference player for the last couple of years. I think he has a chance to be an elite defensive end for us. You look at the guys inside, with Josh Farmer, who was an all-conference player, Daryl Jackson, who was ineligible last year due to transfer, but really has a chance to be a special player. Two of the best defensive tackles, I think, out there. And then you have Marvin Jones that transferred in, Sione that came in from Oregon State. You've got some guys that played meaningful snaps there a year ago, but when you have those two groups that really can be a great strength, it just helps everything else around it. And then you see guys that have grown within the program, and guys like Shane Brown, who's going to be a great leader for us in the defensive backfield. Fentrell Cypress. You have you look at a guy like Azare Thomas, who has really been our third corner. You had 2 guys drafted this last year, but he's played over 400 snaps a year ago, and I think will be potentially the best quarterback, one of the best corners in all of college football, but he has experience, and then he's just continued to grow. You see the same thing at linebacker with DJ Lundy, 2 guys that he played with that are now in the NFL, but now he's got a chance to be a leader on that side, and you really just mix that on both sides of the ball. I think we have the same story there at a lot of the offensive skill positions, but I've been excited about seeing that growth.
Well, it's pretty amazing too, Coach, because when you first got there, you kind of jump-started the program with some transfers, right? And you've never gone the route of a Colorado or even an Arizona State where you're 50-plus guys turning over year to year. You kind of stayed within yourself as 16, 15, 14 in that vicinity for a handful of years, and you mixed in some high school guys. Now those high school guys are kind of ready to blossom, and you're just waiting for them to kind of burst out themselves. So when you got the job a handful of years ago and you assessed what the program needed, is this exactly what you envisioned with, hey, we'll go heavy transfer and then maybe start to wean off that as time moves forward?
Well, really, when you look at it, those first couple of years that we were here, you still had the hard cap 25, so you couldn't, right, even if you wanted to, you couldn't flip the roster of
what a ridiculous rule that was too. By the way, I mean, we'll just. Every time someone's the hard cap 25, just drives me nuts. It's like the worst thing ever. So I apologize. But
and we had to find our balance, and we did have some transfers that came in. But you even look at it, those first couple classes, the high school recruiting, we were in COVID, and so for a new staff coming in, we went a first year and a half without even being able to go into a high school to get a real sense of who these guys were, what they were. We took some guys that came in that have really developed to be great players. I mentioned Josh Farmer, Patrick Payton, DJ Lundy. You see guys Lawrence Toafili was the MVP of the ACC championship. Rob Scott, been a 3-year starter. All those guys that, that came in and played early and they played as freshmen, but you were able to complement it with some transfers that came in that gave us some experience, gave us some guys that could go out there and I think really helped elevate the program even through some very challenging situations. As we got a couple of years in and you get back into high schools, we've still tried to keep that balance. We're about 65% high school signees and about 30 to 35 percent transfers that have come in. So we've really tried to find a good balance with that, finding the complementary pieces that really can come together and work together. Pour in. It's still about finding the right fit, whatever the path of somebody's journey is. If we're still looking for guys that fit this program, they fit the culture, they embrace all inclusive approach we try to have here at Florida State, and I think it's really gelled well. And as we've you see the impact of the early high school freshmen that have been able to come in, it's exciting, and it's exciting about where it's going. And I think that's where this roster is, where it's got a chance to really continue to elevate.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. You referenced the offensive line a little earlier, but being maybe the best group you've had collectively. I feel like last year we were preparing for the opener, and I feel like we've done you guys in the opener like almost every year for the most part, like dating back 4 or 5 years. Last year we didn't, but every time I sit down with you, it's like, man, we got an experienced group up front. Do you ever not have an experienced group up front? Like 190 starts back this year along the offensive line. I mean, that's absurd, man. That's got to be one of the tops in the sport.
Well, it's been good, and when you have experience and you have guys that have grown through the process. Some guys that have come in. Richie Leonard's a guy that was a 12, 13 game starter there in the SEC a year ago. That's come in, and I think he's going to bring just great leadership and experience with what he does. You've got guys that some guys that have even come in that might be a little older that are still looking to define their role, and they have the maturity. They have the physicality, they have all those things that you're looking for, and now it's time for them to go do it. And then on the flip side of it, some of these high school guys that came in 2-3 years ago that have grown and really just emerging as the players that they can be. So when you get into that too deep, where there's not really a hole or not a place that you have an overwhelming concern if somebody was to get injured, I mean that's kind of where we've gotten to.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. We've gone 7-8 minutes now without talking DJ Uiagalelei. All of us are fascinated because I just think about, visualize your offense. It's taken on a bunch of different, personalities. And with Jordan, having a guy that was so mobile and could do so many things with the ball in his hands and create, and with the run game, quarterback run game. Now, DJ's pretty mobile as well. It's just a different type of runner, more of a power guy. But he looked slim in the spring game. Granted, it might have been the turquoise jersey, but he looked slim in the spring game. He looked decisive in the spring game. His release even looked a touch quicker. So when you were evaluating portal prospects, and I know you guys evaluate them every year, what was it about DJ that made you think, hey, this is our guy? And what have you seen from him since he's been on campus to make you feel real confident in what his contributions might be?
I think DJ is the total package. I mean, you see an elite level talent, skill, obviously the size, and really has a lot of great experience. And that experience, some of it's been really good, some of it's been challenges that he's had to overcome and work through. And I think when you bring all of that to the person, I mean, it starts with him, with his heart. I mean, just a great person, great in the locker room. The guys in that quarterback room, I mean, they're all competing with and for each other. They are. Yeah. He is. I mean, they love him and just what he brings. And it's really been fun watching those relationships emerge. But he is he's really embraced all things that we're asking him to do. Obviously, there's things that we're going to continue to work to the personnel that we have. As an offense, we've done that throughout the years. You referenced been knowing each other for 12 years. We've had a lot of different types of quarterbacks, and guys that we've been able to try to put in a position to be successful with what's surrounding them, but also being able to play to the skills and talents that they have. So I think DJ has a chance to have an exceptional year, and for him it all starts with the work, and has really done a wonderful job as he's come in.
I've said it a million times. If I could pick somebody to call plays for me, and I could have anybody, it's you and Steve Sarkisian. I think you guys do it better than anybody, but you have a tendency to cater the offense to the individual personnel. So what is that process like? as a play caller, as a head coach? Do you sit there in the summer and say, okay, this is who I think we are, so we need to run this, but maybe you get week 4 and that's not who you are, so you have to adjust? What is that process like when you kind of tinker the offense to best suit the skill set of your personnel?
Yeah, for us, I mean, we try to, obviously we have the things that we like, that we feel give us a competitive advantage when it comes to schematic approaches, but still has to go to the personnel. So it's about building the menu, and what are the things that guys do? What are the things that might come easier to them, where it's it really fits to not just quarterback and O line, but receivers, tight ends, running backs, all of those different components, and then how can you help put on display the things that those guys are confident in playing the fastest in, because no defense is going to call and say, hey, we're going to show you this in this game. You got to be able to react to it. You got to be able to adapt, adjust, and then so you got to have a menu. But as you do go through the season, it is about the self-evaluation, and that's going to happen in fall camp. That's going to happen as we're leading up to kicking off in week 0. I mean, and then even it might even be within the course of the game, is that you got to have things that you can go to be able to adapt and adjust to whatever it is you might see, and then that always is going to progress throughout the course of the regular season towards the postseason as you finish the whole journey up.
I mean, you referenced week 0, and that's just a short little trip right down the road in Dublin. I know that it's really important as far as growing Florida State's brand. There's no denying that. It's massive, and we're gonna have 10 million people probably watch that game. I mean, everyone's gonna watch. How could you not? It's a tremendous matchup on a day where there's just not a ton of games, and we'll be starved for football by that point. So when you look at that road game in Dublin, I guess you could say, what does that opportunity mean to Florida State, and how have you kind of embraced the challenges of playing overseas in a game like that?
Well, I mean, it's definitely the stage that this program is built for, and to be the first game in college football, something we're honored to be able to be a part of, to be able to have a unique experience going to play in Ireland, is definitely great. It's going to be a first time for most of our guys ever leaving the country, and I'm glad that the schedule kind of worked out that we don't play till the following Monday, Monday of Labor Day, so we're actually going to stay an extra day, so guys can get an educational experience there and just kind of get a sense of the culture and the people, the place. And so it really works out in both regards. But, it's kind of what we're built for. And it's, our guys understand the expectation. They understand the sense of urgency. We kick off the first 2 games are both going to be, the game on television that day, and we're excited about the opportunity, but we got to do everything in our power to go and start the season as good as we possibly can, and I'm excited for all the different elements that entails.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I think it's probably one of the cooler things to be able to do that. I couldn't even imagine how cool that would have been as a college player. The thing is, though, passports. Does everybody on the team have one? I would imagine that's a bit of a headache for the compliance office.
It's been a 2-year process. So the minute this game got to,
you have yours is my question. Like we just need to know for sure that you can get there, and the rest of the team will follow suit, right?
We've from basically the day that this game was announced, we started the process of getting passports, and it's been our administrative team has been great. Being able to set a plan, because it really does affect basically a year and a half of all planning, not just getting a passport, which for a lot of our guys this will be the first time they ever go to get a passport, but it will also open up so many doors beyond their football playing careers, where
right.
There will be a comfort in leaving the country and how you can operate, where you can go, and it's really going to be a neat experience. But playing in week 0, it pushes everything forward. It's a little bit limited in your summer program, so just the importance and the urgency of all things is definitely there. But we're excited about it.
I know maybe you can recruit over there. You think does Ireland have good football players? I don't know.
I did go do. I took a trip during our spring break. Promotional. Some promotional opportunities. Was able to take Maria, my wife Maria, and my daughter Mila. We went over there for a few days, and I watched. watched a rugby match when I was there, and let me tell you, there's some tough human beings, there, playing rugby, and just it was really just a neat experience. Even watching the Gaelic games that are there and customary in Ireland, it was awesome. It was a great experience, and really enjoyed the time, and definitely fired up to be able to kick off a season there in Dublin.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I don't know if you'll land an Irish rugby footballer or whatever you call a rugby player over there, but it does appear that you're starting on the recruiting trail earlier and earlier. Saw this video making the rounds the other day. Lorenzo Jackson Jr. He can't be more than 2.5, 3 years old. You already have secured a commitment from him. Exactly how early is the recruiting process starting nowadays?
You should see that kid throw a football. Pretty impressive. No,
we'll find a place for him. Just say, hey, we just need that sign on the dotted line. I mean, goodness gracious. That was a great video, though, Coach.
No, I mean, it's, obviously, as you go through this journey, and everything has pushed up, now with the December, sign-up period moved up, to the beginning of the month.
Right.
It just puts such a sense of urgency of the summers, and, trying to get guys that, might be in the future classes, here at camp, to get to know who you are, what you are, see, so they can see you coach, to be able to go through those instructional, opportunities. And then, but everything is accelerated, and, still at the end of the day, it's about finding the right fit, and that's what we hold our hold our hat to, and making sure that we're accountable to bringing in the right guys into this program, and just continue to elevate it. And I was really proud of you look at this last year team. We had 25 all conference players. We had 10 draft picks. Guys that are achieving all the goals and the dreams that they had coming in, and we're looking just to continue to build upon that as we move forward.
Well, with your contract extension and the incredible success that the program's had already, there's a real strong possibility you'll be recruiting Lorenzo Jackson Jr. for real here in 10 years or so. Finally, we'll get you out of here on this. Look, we talk about the success and the wins and losses. That's huge, and no one's denying that. But creating a program that is allowing players to better themselves, and more than just football. You guys recently had a 997 APR. Which you tell me how impressive that is, because I think a lot of people don't have perspective about how ridiculous. I've never heard of one in like the 990s. I don't think I ever have. So help us understand what that means to you, and what that means for Florida State football moving forward.
Well, it's a tremendous compliment to our players and the work that they put in, to our academic staff, to our coaches, to everybody that's willing to push, just the expectation. And, we talk all the time, we want to push to be our best. And, it can't just be what you're doing on the field. We want that to be a part of the identity. And, Greg, I love to tell you, every one of our players love academics, but they don't. And, it's just, but when you still are willing to push to be your best in what you don't necessarily love or like, it's going to be that much easier to push to be your best when you get to step on that field. And I think that consistency and just the confidence that's built throughout the academic success is really been beneficial for us. And so just proud of our guys. It is a wonderful accomplishment, but there's still a few points out there, so we're gonna work to get better.
Well, so the perfect score is what now?
It's 1,000.
Okay, so you're 3 points shy, and there's buzz. Just saying, there's buzz. Alex Atkins and Adam Fuller actually brought it down for the rest of the team. So there's buzz about your offensive and defensive coordinator. They're the ones that brought you down from 1,000 to 997. The players are doing their part, but you need to talk to the staff, right?
Yeah, we're all working to get better.
Man, this has been a great visit. We so look forward to seeing you this fall. We know you're going to have a great team. Week 0 from Dublin against Georgia Tech. So, man, have a great summer. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, buddy. You have a great summer as well, and go Noles.
Great visit with Mike Norvell. Team's in a great spot to make a charge yet again. Going to be some new faces out there for Florida State, but they're going to be really good. They're always really good. As long as he's running the show, they're going to be in the mix. And I think the ACC, like we've talked about before, the ACC is deep, man. It's really deep, especially at the top. I think there's 6 or 7 teams that are very dangerous in that league. But the 3 that I anticipate being there at the end, Miami, Florida State, and Clemson, whatever order you have them finishing, it's going to be a war. And what I think is an improved league here in 24. So with the conversation we had with Mike Norvell, it kind of got our wheels spinning a little bit. Felt like we had to go week by week and look at some under-the-radar games with playoff implications, okay? Now, a lot of people are going to sit here and say, well, okay, it's obvious. I don't need to convince. I could tell somebody that Bama, Georgia has playoff implications that has never watched college football. Like, everybody probably knows that game has playoff implications. I could tell you that some of these games are pretty obvious, and some I think are a little bit down the list a little bit that week in particular, with what games might ultimately put a team in the playoff. And in defeat, would have a team on the outside looking in potentially. And some of these are going to be conference related as well. Remember, you almost have to go 1 loss, 2 loss to get to the conference title game now. And if you don't do that, you're going to have a tough time getting to the college football playoff out of some of these leagues. So we'll start in week 0. Florida State and Georgia Tech is a playoff implication game. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Florida State, Georgia Tech is dangerous. I mentioned the ACC. I think Georgia Tech is in that contingent of teams that can beat anybody. Florida State has legitimate playoff expectations, as they should. That game has massive playoff implications. And people won't necessarily phrase it that way because Florida State will probably be a heavy favorite going in. But that game is significant, potentially, as we fast forward to the end of the year and evaluate the playoff picture. When you look at week 1, the obvious ones are as follows. You have Georgia and Clemson, 2 teams that likely have playoff consideration, right? We know that. But if you're going to go to the under the radar games, Miami at Florida has playoff implications. Miami, I think, has a real chance of getting to the college football playoff. They lose on the road at their rival in week 1. You expect Miami to go in 11-0 after that? You expect them to go 10-1 after that? It's going to be tough sledding in the event in which they lose that game. Notre Dame at Texas A&M. That is also week 1, under the radar game that has massive playoff implications. If you look at Notre Dame's schedule, seriously, look at Notre Dame's schedule. You are not going to be overwhelmingly impressed with their road schedule. Their home schedule is pretty good. You got Louisville, you got Florida State, you got a couple other games. But if they lose that game on the road at A&M, that is going to be a significant challenge. I think that's one of their tougher games, to be honest with you. Week 2, Texas and Michigan, that's the headliner. But 2 games that have significant playoff implications that won't be at the top billing. Arkansas at Oklahoma State. You're going to say Arkansas at Oklahoma State? What are you talking about? I'm not saying Arkansas is a playoff contender. I'm saying Oklahoma State is. Out of the Big 12, with what they bring back, if they lose one of their tougher non-conference games to Arkansas, it's going to be tough for them to get back in the good graces of the committee in the event in which they don't win the Big 12. Especially as an at-large team, Oklahoma State's probably not going to get in if they lose to Arkansas in the non-conference. So that's a game they absolutely have to win at home. How about Tennessee on the road in Charlotte against NC State? Now, I know it's a neutral site, but you would think it's probably going to be 50-50, if not more, Tennessee fans there in Charlotte in week 2. I think NC State's super dangerous. The ACC, like we talked about, they're in that contingent of very dangerous teams. Tennessee, this will be their tough test for Nico Iamaleava against Tony Gibson in that defense. Really tough defense to prepare for. Really tough defense to play against. That will be a game that has legit playoff implications. Alabama, Wisconsin's week 3. Georgia, Kentucky's week 3. We know those games have them. How about this one? Arizona at Kansas State. That's week 3 on a Friday. Okay? We've seen Friday games destroy Pac-12 teams in the past. But now we have a Big 12 challenger in Arizona against one of the favorites in the Big 12 in Kansas State. And this game's taking place on a Friday night. Well, the loser probably going to be in a tough spot, a game and a half back, because you lose the head-to-head. Now you're in trouble in the conference standings. To get to the conference championship game, you got to probably win this game. And then you also take a loss potentially in the court of public opinion when it comes to your at-large potential. So Arizona at Kansas State, playoff implications on the line there on Friday. How about this one? Memphis at Florida State. Not so much for Florida State, though. Not so much for Florida State. We've long talked about the G5 and their spot in the playoff. Well, this is Memphis's chance to play, and we're one of the best G5 teams, to play on the road at another playoff contender. They get blown out of the water by 40. That's going to be a real problem for Memphis when being measured against teams like Liberty that don't have a challenge like this on their schedule. I think Memphis should be rewarded for challenging themselves, but we will cross that bridge when we get there. Let's go to week 4. Tennessee at Oklahoma is the headliner. The 2 under the radar games, Utah at Oklahoma State. Massive game as far as the Big 12 title is concerned. Utah the favorite alongside Kansas State. They're on the road against an Oklahoma State team that can pound you and went to the Big 12 title game a year ago. That's a significant one. How about NC State at Clemson? Now, Clemson's a tough place to go in. I already told you that Clemson's a playoff contender. You understand that. NC State, I think, can be one of those teams that could absolutely knock Clemson off if the offense is as advertised. If not, you're going to have two great defenses going at it there in that one, in a game that might have some playoff implications when we fast forward to the end of the season. Week 5, the biggest game of the weekend is Georgia-Bama. We know that. But how about Louisville at Notre Dame? Notre Dame lost to Louisville last year, which extinguished any chance they had of getting to the college football playoff. And then how about this one? Florida State on the road at SMU. SMU's dangerous now. If you look at SMU's odds to win the ACC, they have the 5th shortest odds in the ACC. Okay, I've already told you, we know Miami, we know Florida State, we know Clemson. The fact that SMU is only 2 spots back of those 3 teams in odds to win the league is pretty surprising. Their first year in the ACC, and it might be a little bit of a unique road game there for Florida State when they go on the road to Dallas to take on the Mustangs. Week 6, Auburn at Georgia, Michigan at Washington, Clemson at Florida State. Those are the 3 headliners. Don't sleep on this one. Miami at Cal. That game very well could be played at 10:30 Eastern time. And Miami's got to travel all the way across country and play at 10:30 potentially. That's going to be a challenge on their body clock. So, buried there potentially in the nightcap, Auburn, Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Clemson, Florida State. Those are all huge. We know those have playoff implications. But don't sleep. Tough road game for Miami on the road at Cal. Let's go to week 7. Headliners, Ohio State at Oregon, Red River, Penn State at USC, I think, is also kind of a headliner, but that's the only one I could find this week that was a bit of the under radar. So week 7, really good slate. That's all you need to know. Week 8, headliners, Georgia, Texas, Bama, Tennessee. This week is the best one if you're looking for under-the-radar games involving playoff teams, okay? Playoff implications potentially on the line. Let's start on Friday, 10:15 Eastern time kick. Oklahoma State at BYU. This was a crazy game last year. BYU almost went to Stillwater and got it done. Now Oklahoma State returns to BYU, and maybe BYU this time can upset a team with legitimate Big 12 title and college football playoff hopes. Notre Dame at Georgia Tech is on week 8 as well. Notre Dame needs to be very careful. I've already talked about Georgia Tech as it relates to Florida State. I think Georgia Tech's got a lot of team speed. Now, that could be one, like last year, where they go on the road around this time of year, week 8, week 9. Last year they went to Louisville. This year maybe they go to Georgia Tech, and maybe they run into a bit of a buzzsaw. Miami at Louisville is another game with playoff implications. A very tough road game for Miami against a team that has legitimate ACC championship hopes as well. And then finally, Kansas State at West Virginia. Told you I think Kansas State is the favorite in the Big 12. Totally expected. But West Virginia has a lot of pieces back that you'd love to have, and they have one of the best home field environments in the Big 12s. That game, Kansas State, can they survive a road trip to Morgantown? That'll be a significant one. Week 9, a little bit lighter load in Week 9. Missouri at Alabama is the headliner. But Kansas at Kansas State. Rivalry game, ladies and gentlemen. This game, Kansas has the 3rd best odds to win the Big 12 this year. Kansas State is the favorite to win the Big 12 alongside Utah. Can Kansas go on the road and knock off Kansas State in a rivalry game to maybe upset the pecking order there in the Big 12? That's a close one that we'll be following. In Week 10, Oregon at Michigan's the headliner. Ohio State at Penn State is the secondary headliner. But in the under-the-radar card, Louisville at Clemson. This one very well could determine whether or not Louisville is still in the mix or Clemson's still in the mix as an ACC title contender. Let's go to Week 11. The headliners are as follows. Alabama at LSU, Georgia at Ole Miss, Florida State at Notre Dame. Couple under the radar games, though, both coming out of the ACC. Clemson at Virginia Tech. Be careful. You just played Louisville the week before. Now you're having to go to Virginia Tech with a really quality offensive team, a lot of production back, and the home field that might be rocking here in early November. That's a difficult road trip for Clemson at this point of the season. And then you have Miami going to Georgia Tech. We know what happened last year. Miami didn't take a knee. Georgia Tech recovered the fumble. A couple of big plays later, they steal one off of Miami's racket. Can they do it again, potentially this time at home? I don't think it's going to end the way it did, but Georgia Tech, they keep popping up as a dangerous team, keep popping up as a very dangerous team here heading into 2024 with some of their team speed at quarterback, running back, and at wide receiver. Let's go to week 12. Tennessee at Georgia is the headliner, but a couple of games that are a little bit down on the list that still might have massive implications. Texas, they make their first showing in the under-the-radar games. Texas goes to Arkansas here in week 12. Now, we've seen really good teams go to Arkansas in the past and it not go well. It's a tough place to play. It has a chance to have weather in the forecast at this point of the calendar, and this is Arkansas' Super Bowl. If you look back at what happened to Texas last time they went to Fayetteville, it did not end well for the Longhorns. Now, different Arkansas team, different Texas team, but still a difficult road trip, and a game that Texas, I think, will absolutely have to win if they want to stay atop the SEC, if they want to continue to be in the mix. They're in the SEC championship race and the college football playoff race. If they don't win the SEC, well, this game could very well determine whether or not they're still considered an at-large team. Oregon then travels to Wisconsin. And we know Wisconsin, jump around, great environment. Tyler Van Dyke, veteran quarterback, hopefully an improved roster across the board, comfort what they're doing offensively and defensively. Oregon doesn't have a lot of road trips that scare me to death. This one doesn't either, but this is still a very difficult game, especially knowing this could be sub-zero temperatures in Wisconsin at this point of the calendar. Now, mid-November, probably unlikely, but still possible. So this is a game that I think Oregon needs to be very careful with here in week 12. Let's go to week 13. The headliner this week, Alabama at Oklahoma, but a couple of very tough games with legitimate playoff implications. Ole Miss at Florida. This is one that you need to be real careful of your Ole Miss. Like we know Ole Miss is going to be ready to take on the world when they play LSU, when they're ready to take on the world when they play against Georgia. They're going to be in a good spot to play in those games to kind of cycle up. But there's a couple of road trips that I think are very tricky for Ole Miss. I think the Arkansas road trip's a tricky one. I think this Florida one is extremely tricky. Florida last year, and we all know that Florida wasn't great last year, Florida went to Missouri at this point of the season, middle to late November, and gave Missouri all they wanted. And Missouri at that point was a fixture in the top 10, top 11, top 12. Well, Florida rallied the troops late in the season and made it real uncomfortable for the Missouri Tigers. Can they do so for Ole Miss when they travel to the Swamp on the 13th week of the season? And then speaking of Missouri, they traveled to Mississippi State. And Mississippi State, for those that have been there, you know that that's a really difficult place to play. It's really loud. It's really challenging. It's not an easy place to travel to. You're having to stay and bus in from a place that's a little bit down the road. It's not an easy road trip. It's always a difficult road trip, and Missouri will find that out. Missouri, also a team that has legit playoff expectations coming into the season, given what they bring back on the offensive side. Now, at this point of the season, are those playoff chances still a realistic possibility? We'll find out, but this is one of the trickier road games for Missouri on the schedule. They also go to Bama. This road trip to Mississippi State, flying under the radar, but one that you need to be very careful with if you are the Missouri Tigers. And then in week 14, rivalry week, we all know the big headliners in this one. All right, we know it. We know Iron Bowl. We know Texas A&M. We know Ohio State, Michigan. We know all the big headline games in rivalry weekend. But I'll tell you a couple that are down the list a little bit that might have an impact on the college football playoff. Memphis at Tulane. This game might very well determine who is playing in the AAC championship. And in the event that Memphis beats Tulane on their home field, I would think that would be a huge feather in their cap. Now, we talked about them a little earlier as it relates to the game against Florida State, but Memphis, with a really nice roster returning, could be in position to secure that G5 bid in the event in which they win this game. Notre Dame then travels to USC. I think USC's got a chance to be sneaky good this year. People aren't quite ready to hop on board that bandwagon just yet. I understand the hesitancy. I get it. I still think SC has talent. I still think SC is going to be able to score. And I do think SC will be a whole lot better on the defensive side of the football under Coach Danton Lynn, who comes over from UCLA as the defensive coordinator. So Notre Dame in that final road trip of the season, can they go to SC and get the job done? Another massive game with playoff implications. Okay, before we put a bow on the show, we want to tell you a couple news and notes coming out of the weekend. Kind of a quiet weekend, which, by the way, is kind of a good thing. At this point of the season, no news is good news as it relates to college football and, in particular, college football players. We do have some things to look forward to here the rest of the week, though. We're going to find out some of the SEC kick times a little bit today. You're not going to know exactly what time some of these teams are going to kick, but we will know whether or not games are going to be played in the morning, or they're going to be played in the night, or whether or not they have that flex status, which means they can be played in the afternoon or at night. So we will find that out, and we'll go through some of the more notable games a little later in the week and how that might impact some of the teams that have playoff aspirations. But other news and notes, Army-Navy will no longer have a Saturday to themselves. Now, this is an unintended consequence of the expanded college football playoff. And I hate this. If you want my personal opinion, the fact that Army-Navy no longer lives alone on a Saturday to themselves is really troublesome. It is. Like, I want them to be able to play on December 14th. That's this year. And the Saturday after the college football, playoff committee rankings are released, after conference championship weekend, I would love for them to have a standalone window. And I wish it was 5 hours, because I want to see the marching on. I want to see all the traditions and players being highlighted. I mean, these are the guys that are making a significant sacrifice for not just playing a sport that they love so much, but they deserve to be celebrated for their commitment that they're making, not just to their teammates or to their universities, but to the American people, with their service that extends beyond that of what they do at West Point and at the Naval Academy. So I wish it was going to be played by itself, but unfortunately the Celebration Bowl will kick off at noon Eastern time. Army and Navy will be at 3 o'clock Eastern time, and the Camellia Bowl will wrap up at 9 o'clock. The one thing I wished, I'm always okay with games after Army-Navy. I just don't love having a game before Army-Navy. So it is what it is. It's a necessary evil with the expanded playoff, but I still hope that Army and Navy gets celebrated the way it deserves to be celebrated. The NCAA has also decided to allow commercial sponsorship advertisements on football fields for regular season games at all three levels. So D1, FBS, FCS, D2, all this stuff. So the NCAA Playing Rules Oversight Panel approved the recommendation from the Football Rules Committee that the rule allows for corporate advertisements to be placed in 3 spots on the field. A single advertisement centered on the 50-yard line, along with no more than 2 smaller flanking advertisements elsewhere on the field that can be done on a game-by-game basis for the entire season. Now, the new rule kind of gives schools some additional opportunity for revenue, and this is all kind of hinging on what transpired with the landmark House versus NCAA settlement that could mean more than $2.7, $2.8 billion in back damages on a new revenue sharing model with athletes. So it is what it is. I don't like it. I'm never going to like it. I like college football to feel collegial. I don't want it to feel corporate, but it is what it is. So if we want these schools to continue to support non-revenue generating sports, this is what has to happen potentially. That's all it is. But I'm not really looking forward to seeing a corporate sponsor logo at the 50-yard line. Just going to be honest. It's going to make me feel uncomfortable. I don't like it. It is what it is. It's where we're at in college football. The good news is when the teams are facing off against each other, the sport still feels the same as it always did. We still tailgate the way we always did. We still consume it the way we always did. It's still going to be awesome. It's just a little bit more corporate than it used to be. So that being said, it is what it is. I want to thank all of you for being with us today. It's been an awesome show. It's always really fun to visit with these coaches too. I think Mike Norvell deserves immense credit. And we've been with him from the beginning. Like, if you actually look back and kind of chart what we've said about Florida State dating back to our time, even before we started this show, I have long been a believer in Mike Norvell. I think he's got it going at Florida State. I don't think they're going to slow down. I think they're going to have a great year this year. I think they're going to be a problem for a lot of teams. I just am really curious more than anything else to see how DJ Uiagalelei plays in this style of offense. I think he's got all the talent in the world. Now it's about bringing that talent to the forefront. Because if you go watch how he played and how confident he played back in 2020, it was a little bit different than it was in 2021 and 2022. Got a little bit of it back last year at Oregon State, but now hoping to put all of it together and reach his ceiling as a college football player. So really looking forward to that as well. Continue to ask all of you to like, rate, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your show. And for all of us here at Always College Football, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day, and remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.